Hey guys, was in Springfield, Illinois earlier in the month, and I went to the NMRA convention that they had going on down there. I had a really good time, taught a couple of classes. For the most part that went pretty good. I had a little trouble in the second class with the computer. It was giving me some trouble, and I had kind of make the best of it. But overall the classes went well. I got to meet some really cool people, and I took a little bit of footage, which I'm going to show here in a little bit. I wish I took a little bit more footage, but I got what I got, so I'm going to show that, and hope you guys enjoy, and hopefully I'll be back down there next year.
Before we begin, I'd like to introduce the Illinois Valley Division Superintendent Mike Shockley, who'd like to make a few remarks.
Thank you all so very much for coming. We know that there are thousands of things you could be doing and probably 100 that you should be doing. But, you know, you got to take a break once in a while. Life gets in the way and all of a sudden it passes on past. So I want to thank you all very much. You've made this a success. It wasn't us, it was you all because you showed up. But we also have to thank Mr. Jurgis, who dragged us kicking and screaming through the whole process of all of this, and this is essentially his brainchild. Whatever we did to support it, we did so willingly and without regret whatsoever. So thank you, Mike. We plan these kinds of things all the time, so.
You'd expect it to be better.
Are you trying to say that's where the blade goes?
The buck stops here. I know that, and I appreciate the comments that I've heard, and this is hard and easy all at the same time, so we hope the well-oiled machine had a little grease in it, and we can get this thing done. We appreciate it so much. But certainly this evening, which is a little bit different than we're typically doing, we have the people that are probably some of the most recognized names in model railroading industry. And they have worked with the NMRA and they've done all kinds of things. We have, you going to do this part or you want me to?
No.
Okay. It is so well oiled.
Castor oil.
Yes. So anyway, Mr. Jurgens, play your game.
All right. No. We're in Springfield. Okay. Tonight's presentation is in lieu of the traditional banquet. Not that there's anything wrong with another banquet, but it was our idea to do something a little different. We wanted to make this convention a little different. First, we did away with the formal atmosphere and went to a more relaxed affair. And second, we wanted this to be not only memorable, but a little historical. We've gathered together some of the best talent and minds that the hobby has to offer. And we're going to take advantage. Thanks, Mom.
You're getting some snide grins, like, are you kidding me?
And we're going to take full advantage of that tonight as we begin the first, hopefully not last, Masters of Model Railroading Unplugged. Ladies and gentlemen, we had planned for some really great guest speakers, notable members of the NMRA, and extremely talented modelers. Well, here's what we ended up with. For this, we planned a grandiose graphic presentation, Dolby surround sound, and high-tech visual effects. Well, in the interest of remaining financially solvent as an organization, we are going to make the most of what we have of our Freeport room, some microphones, and an extremely low-rent moderator. So let's get started. First, our guests. First, from the great state of Ohio, Alan McClellan got started in model railroading in the late 1940s, incredibly in S-scale. We won't hold that against him. Say stuff.
Remember what I said yesterday?
Yes, you did.
I don't think Mike made it to that clinic.
Yes, I did. Okay, Alan has created a modeling masterpiece of the HO scale Virginia and Ohio Railroad. Alan is a master model railroader, served as president of the Mid-Central region, and has authored many articles for Railroad Model Craftsman and Model Railroader magazine. Additionally, Alan's book, The B&O Story, has captured the imaginations of modelers for over 2 generations. Please welcome Alan McLaughlin. Tony Custer was born in Iowa, grew up and went to school in Indiana, graduated from Purdue University, and now resides in New Jersey. Proud to call himself a Midwesterner, Tony is a founding member of the Nickel Plate Historical Society. He has modeled, among other things, their classy Berkshire locomotive, paint and lettering scheme into his own Allegheny Midland Railroad. A few years ago, Tony retired the AM to pursue his renewed passion for the nickel plate. And formerly an editor for Railroad Model Craftsman, today Tony maintains a monthly column in Model Railroader, Trains of Thought. He has authored over 9 books on the hobby, and Tony is the at-large worldwide director for the NMRA. Please welcome Tony Custer. Andy Sperandio has been retired as the executive editor of Model Railroader magazine. He's also written a few books on model railroading, a few. Has authored lots of articles, too numerous to name. The Model Railroader's Guide to Freight Yards and a few other books. Sperandio has hosted a video once called Model Railroads in Action. Layouts from Great Model Railroads magazine, which is a rare video to find. He's also an operator on the Model Railroaders Club layout, the MR&T, Milwaukee, Racine, and Troy. He was on 2 episodes of Tracks Ahead, one which was the MR&T and the other dedicating John Allen's Gory and Defeated Railroad. When he was in the U.S. Army back in the 60s, he was a frequent operator on the Gory and Defeated. Is that so?
It was the 70s.
The 70s. One of John
I
Allen's...
started in Esquimalt too.
One of John Allen's locomotives, number 34, a 410 that John kit bashed from parts, was probably displayed in his office. And he's building a home layout based on the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe at Cajun Pass, California, in HO scale.
What did I say? It's Cajun.
Tastes better, huh?
It's Louisiana.
Hey, Mike, would it help if we raised your salary?
Double it. Cajon Pass, California, in HO scale, around 1947. Please welcome the one and only Andy Sperandio. And finally, Mike Bristol. Also from the great state of Ohio, Mike Bristol was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, around 1951. Has lived most all of his life there and has been involved in the NMRA since around 1966. Of course, these FBI files are hard to decipher. Mike's favorite road is the Chesapeake and Ohio in the transition era. A frequent operator on the Virginia and Ohio Railroad, Mike has a close association with the Appalachian coal hauler. Mike has served on various boards and committees in his capacity with the NMRA, including terms as the Cincinnati Division 7 Division President and Mid-Central Region President. Mike was elected President of the NMRA in 2006 and will conclude his term this year. Mike Bristol.
Sitting up here with the Masters of Model Railroading, I feel like I'm here with Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle, and I'm Wally Pitt. He was the guy that Luke Gehrig replaced as first baseman. Baseball stuff, never mind.
Sure to be a hit.
Why is train order operation becoming so popular?
Andy ought to really answer this because he's an ace in this stuff. I'm a pretender, but if you look carefully, and I think I have, and others who really pioneered it, I wasn't the one. It was Jack Lozanich and Bill Darnaby and the Batavia Club that was near Chicago, and the La Mesa Club out in California is probably Yankee Stadium at the World Series, even to this day. That's where probably the most realistic timetable and train order operation takes place because it's a huge railroad and you're moving at very slow speeds with very long trains. And it's very intimidating, you know, when you don't really know the railroad that well and how often do I get to San Diego, you know, maybe once a year, probably once every 3 years. And so why would I put myself in that corner? In fact, a good example was just once I got to dispatch the Maumee. They learned very quickly that I probably wasn't the guy that should be doing that. But there's a guy named Scotty Given that's a real pro, and he was looking over my shoulder. But you can tell if you're a good dispatcher when you're anticipating things and setting things up in advance rather than reacting to things. And I was reacting to things. But I'd warned my buddy Perry Squire not to get number 50 out of East Yard, which is a third-class train, which means it's way down in the pecking order. But at least it's an eastbound, which gives you priority over westbound. But I don't think there are any third-class westbound, so you don't have any priority over anybody. And so next thing I know, I hear over the telephone that, you know, an OS for number 50, and I thought, that's Perry. What's the matter with him? But you get the next train. You don't get to pick. And he got to the very first town on Bill's Railroad, which was Delphia, Ohio. And I never heard from the guy again. You know, I mean, he just like disappeared, but I was coping with my own particular problems, trying to stay alive, and then it was a shift change time, and Andy came in and he says, I'll take over as dispatcher, which was a relief to me because by now everything was completely screwed up and I knew he could fix it. And I also was taking over for him in East Yard, and there is nobody that leaves the yard in better shape than Andy, so I knew that by the time I had that all screwed up, it'd be time to leave. This was a good day for me. I told Andy, I said, just give me a second here before I go to East Yard. I got to go see what happened to Perry. So I went around the corner to Delphia, and there he is. His train's in the passing siding, and he's got his head buried in the timetable, trying to figure out whether he could move or not, which means you got to find a slot and all this stuff coming, and then jump to the next town. And he's looking at his train orders, he's looking at this, and he didn't even look up to acknowledge my presence. I was just sitting there looking at him, and he looked at this, and then he looked at me, and he says, this is really scary. Well, I admit that. It is really scary until you start getting it, you know, and by getting it, I don't mean you become the ace of the base in train orders, but rather you understand a lot of things, you know, that you understand the general book of rules, and you know what Rule 99 is, and you know what Rule 17 is, and you just know some of these things by getting burned 6 times before, and then you know the general forms of train orders. But more to the point, when a professional railroader goes to work at 10 a.m., he gets a call at 10 a.m., he's not looking at the timetable wondering what all's going on out there. He'll just ask, is 98 in yet? You know, that's all he wants to know is, where's 98? And the guy says, oh, 98 got in an hour ago. Good. You know, he now knows he's got 3-hour window. He'll check the train register to see what's come in and going out and all that stuff. But he's got a real clear picture, and it's the same thing I was listening in on Channel 9 on United going into O'Hare on a Friday evening. And they gave the pilot a string of radio commands. I mean, just one right after another. And this is back before the FAA got so nasty about the way you read back radio things. And the pilot radioed back and said, yeah, we'll do all that. Well, you know, I mean, you could hear people laughing around the cabin. You knew who was listening to Channel 9. But all that pilot was listening. He did this every friggin' day of the week for the last 10 years. All he wanted to know is, are we going in on the left side or the right side of runway 3? You know, 3 left, 3 right. That's all he wanted to know. He knew where the wind was, and he knew which, just tell me which side we're going in, and all the rest of it was given. That's when timetable and train order starts being fun, is that instead of all the foundation stuff that just intimidate the newcomer, you get through that finally. And the only way to do that is jump into the pool and start swimming. If you're not going to learn swimming, standing on the shore, going like this and pretend to breathe, you got to get in the water. So I think that what we found is that it's kind of a form of motorized chess. And some people don't like chess, some people like checkers, some like Chinese checkers. It may not be for you, but if you ever get a chance, team up with somebody. Don't go in alone, but get with one of the veterans and learn. You be the engineer and let him be the conductor, or her be the conductor, and learn this stuff. Because I can't think of another form of moving trains that is more interesting for the crew as opposed to just the dispatcher.
Andrew?
What was the question? No,
Train orders, suddenly so popular.
yeah,